Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan, and we are broadcasting live on October 29th from the studios of WMNF in Tampa. I want to thank Jason Marlowe for filling in for me last week. Today on Tuesday Cafe, we're going to talk about water and about the election. Later on in the show, we'll hear from both sides on Amendment 3. That's the Florida ballot initiative that would give adults in Florida the right to recreationally use cannabis. We'll also get updates on the election from the Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, so I hope you stay tuned for all of that. And you can participate during the show. You can email us, dj@wmnf.org. You can text 813-433-0885, or you can call 813-239-9663. And you can get in the queue right now if you'd like to ask us questions. Our first topic is water, and our guests are with the Political Action Committee, Florida's Right to Clean Water. Captain Carl Diegert is the group's chair, and Joe Bonaccia is the group's Southwest Florida chair. Welcome back to Tuesday Cafe, Carl and Joe.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for your continued interest in our effort.
Thank you for coming in, and we'll talk in a little bit about your petition drive, but let's back up to the beginning, and let me just ask, what does that mean, a right to clean water?
Joe, you want to take that one?
Sure. Our effort would establish a fundamental right, an enforceable right to clean and healthy waters. We've enshrined it in the state constitution. This would enable us to hold our state executive branch accountable when, through its action or inaction, it allows harm to our waters. And our waters are not in good condition, not at all. A few quick examples. We've got 1,000 springs, 800 of them are impaired. We've got nearly 1 million acres of estuaries and 9,000 miles of rivers and streams contaminated with fecal bacteria. Red tide over the last 30 years has exploded. So we've got many issues. We've been working on them for a long time with little success. Other states have constitutional environmental rights. They've been very beneficial. We want to have the rights that they have.
We had you on the show a couple of years ago, and you were trying to get this question on the 2024 ballot, but you decided last year that 2026 would be a better target, and that involves gathering signatures. So why don't you tell us how many signatures would you need to get this on the ballot in 2026, and how you're going about gathering those signatures?
So we have a assembly of ambassadors statewide. We currently have over 400. We need many more. We need to make this happen. We need 900,000 signatures, and the legislature only allows you 2 years to do that. So realistically, you're looking at thousands of petition signatures a month. We are totally volunteer grassroots. We don't have the deep pockets that other initiatives like marijuana and the right to choose have. They spend about $5 million per 100,000 signatures. In the election cycle 2022 to 2024, our last attempt, we are very proud of our gathering 110,000 signatures fully volunteer. When you compare that with just a few $1,000s spent compared to millions of dollars spent, we're proud of that work. But we need every Floridian on board to make this happen.
And right now, when people are going to early voting, they're voting in person. A lot of people in Florida. You have a Push to the Polls initiative. What's that?
Well, sure.
Okay.
We want to get as many of our volunteers at polling places as possible, because only registered Florida voters can sign our petitions. And at the polls, that's all you meet, registered voters. They're engaged people. They want to be part of their government. They're voting. I would add that this move is based on history. Back in 1994, Florida had the gillnet ban. That was placed on the ballot because volunteers were able to get hundreds of thousands of petitions in one day, Election Day 1992. To the best of my knowledge, that's the last time a purely grassroots initiative has been successful. We want to come as close as we can to doing what they did.
And so I gather that people will be, when they go to the polls, they're thinking about the current election. If someone comes up to them with a clipboard trying to get their signature, how will they know that it's this is your amendment, your petition drive, rather than some other random thing that they might be asked to sign?
Well, many of our volunteers have T-shirts that have a big Right to Clean Water logo on the front. Others have good-sized buttons that identify them as volunteers for the Right to Clean Water. So there'll be no mistaking that they're there to support a candidate or any of the other initiatives. Right to Clean Water, we're very nonpartisan. Everybody wants clean water, and it immediately disarms folks.
Our guests are with the Political Action Committee, Florida's Right to Clean Water. We have Captain Carl Dygert, the group's chair, and Joe Bonassia, the group's Southwest Florida chair. And this is Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan. We're broadcasting live on October 29th from the studios of WMNF in Tampa. So earlier you talked about other states that had done similar types of movements. There's this Rights of Nature movement. So what can you tell us about that and what's happening in other states as well?
Okay. Carl, you want me to take it or are you going to take it?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
All right. So Pennsylvania and Montana have had environmental constitutional rights since the 1970s. New York is the last state to enshrine it in their constitution. That was a couple of years ago. I'll bring to everyone's attention a very important case. 2 summers ago in Montana, it was a youth climate case. In that situation, Montana had a law on its books that prevented its Department of Environmental Quality from considering environmental consequences when issuing permits to fossil fuel companies. 16 young Montanans considered this to be a violation of their rights because it was just going to aggravate the climate crisis. There have been lots of youth climate cases. So far, this has been the only one that has been successful. And it's because that case was predicated on their right to a clean and healthy environment in their constitution. Pennsylvania has had equally important legal victories. I wanted to make a distinction, though, that what we're pushing right now, what we're promoting, is strictly a human right to clean and healthy waters. It is not giving any aspects of nature any rights. There is a healthy rights of nature movement internationally, and we do have Florida Rights of Nature Network. That's how we began, and perhaps you'll recall in 2020, Orange County did something historic, and they passed their Rights of Nature, Right to Clean Water Charter Amendment. It was because the state legislature very quickly stepped in and preempted the authority of local governments to pass rights of nature laws or to pass laws giving citizens any rights to any aspect of the natural world that compelled us to say, okay, legislature's not going to allow us to work on environmental protection at the local level, then we got to go over their heads and amend the state constitution. And that's why we're doing what we're doing today.
Let's walk through some possibilities. Let's say that you gather enough signatures to get on the 2026 ballot, and let's say that 60% of Floridians pass the amendment and it becomes part of the Florida Constitution. What would that look like? Let's say, there's some sort of water issue in your community after this becomes part of the Constitution. What would you then be able to do that you couldn't do now?
So the state executive agencies, the reason our language focused exclusively on state executive agencies is when we look at pollution across the state and why it occurs and how it's allowed to occur, it all begins with legislative and regulatory decision making. So that's why we focused on that. So through permitting and the issuance of permits, it essentially allows pollution to occur with impunity. The state executive agencies issue permits for water bottling to extract trillions of gallons a year waters per year. They issue water consumption permits to industrial use, for example, phosphate mining, and development, destruction of wetlands. It's all done by permit. So permitting basically just makes an illegal activity a legal activity, with the polluter experiencing no liabilities for any damages that occur. So we now have the legal standing with this new law to fight those permit issuances without being personally harmed or damaged, which usually is a requirement to litigate.
Earlier, we talked about what's happening with several different types of water in the state. Let's go one by one. What about our springs? How are those 800, or is that the number? How are those 800 springs being imperiled? What are the impacts? How is it happening, and what can be done about it?
So excessive extraction, either through water bottling or development, allows greater intrusion of surface waters into the springs, carrying all the nutrients. It also allows saltwater intrusion from below through the karst structure that we have here in Florida. So as you suck more water out, those pollutants are able to go in there. You can visit our springs. To the uninformed, these are pristine, beautiful places, but when you look closely, you'll see bright green algae blooms covering the natural grasses and smothering the natural habitat. It's devastating to watch.
And it's not just springs, but you mentioned earlier also estuaries and rivers. How are they being impacted by policy in Florida and development in Florida?
So primarily, we have failed infrastructure is a huge impact on the environment. On the backside of the two hurricanes recently, we have millions of gallons from multiple municipalities spewing into our lakes and rivers. We now have a raging red tide bloom off the west coast of Florida. So that's, and then we have phosphate mining discharges because of the storms as well. And, a lot of that stuff is phosphate based, and it just feeds these, the red tides and the other algae blooms once it's pumped into the open waters.
Yeah, what we know about the Hurricane Milton and phosphate spills, the Mosaic Company said that polluted water flowed into Tampa Bay from their Riverview plant after Hurricane Milton, and that rainfall from Milton overwhelmed the phosphate mining facility there. Mosaic representatives said more than 17,500 gallons of polluted water may have spilled into Tampa Bay. That's a report that our WMNF's Chris Young did about a week or so ago about the phosphate spill after Hurricane Milton. For people who might not be that familiar with phosphate and how important it is as a limiting nutrient in natural ecosystems in Florida, why would it be bad to spill excess phosphorus into Tampa Bay?
So the nitrogen phosphorus balance is what fuels these algae blooms, whether they are in Lake Okeechobee or whether they're in Tampa Bay. Once the phosphorus level reaches a certain point, it just fuels these blooms. And there's no technology that exists that can be scaled to scrub the waters clean. Now, on a small scale, you can filter a few thousand gallons a day. But when you look at the capacity of, for example, Lake Okeechobee, it holds 1 trillion gallons. If you process even a million gallons a day, it would take decades to clean Lake Okeechobee. So we have to address pollution at the source. And just looping back on the amendment, it sets a ground of reference for all legislative and regulatory decision making, where once something is proposed and taken to the floor for discussion, they first have to hold it in the light of the right to clean water of Floridians. And if it's determined that action or proposal is going to harm our waters, they're going to have to go back and fix it so that it does not. And there are instances where in the public interest, certain activities could be allowed under the amendment, such as, and I think it would be easy to argue that phosphate mining is in the public interest to create fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and all the other phosphate-based chemicals that are just harming our environment. But if allowed, then the amendment would require the permit applicant, to take all necessary steps to prevent that harm to occur. So it really bolsters the environmental protection across Florida.
I want to remind people that we're speaking with Florida's Right to Clean Water advocates, Captain Carl Diegert and Joe Bonaccia, the group's Southwest Florida chair. And Captain Carl is the chair of the group. And we're talking on Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan, and we're broadcasting from the studios of WMNF Tampa. And just as if you're listening here on October 29th, listening live, we have people who are writing in. And so let me read this question that comes in from the area code 941. He is suggesting, or she, sorry, I don't know who is writing in. What if you were to support clean, active springs? If water starts at the springs, why not push pristine springs and then won't clean water follow from there? So what about this listener's question about supporting clean, active springs?
Well, go ahead, Joe.
Well, our amendment would do that. Our amendment is broader than just springs because we have problems that far exceed just springs. And so if you're going to go through the entire process of amending the state constitution, and it's a Herculean task, you want to be able to be as effective as possible and to get as much bang for your buck. Yes, we want clean, pure, pristine springs, but no state has more acres of polluted lake water than does Florida. I want to be working on that issue at the same time we're working on the springs issue. Our amendment is broad enough to cover both. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so when we look at the springs, I believe the comment was that the water starts there. Well, actually, the water doesn't start in the spring itself. It starts in our wetlands. We've lost over 1/3 of our wetlands. The wetlands are the kidneys of Florida that filter the waters into the ground to reach the aquifer to then boil out. Over thousands of miles, it slowly seeps down there and then comes back out. Our aquifers that feed these springs start up into Georgia and North Carolina, and the impacts well outside our boundaries are impacting the water that boils out of the ground in Florida. So we have to look at that issue.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming on WMNF's Tuesday Cafe, Carl and Joe.
Thank you very much, Sean.
I think
so. Really appreciate the continued support.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Captain Carl Diegert is the chair of Florida's Right to Clean Water, and Joe Bonaccia is the group's Southwest Florida chair. They're gathering petitions to get a right to clean water on the 2026 Florida ballot, and you can find out more at floridarighttocleanwater.org. Thanks so much for joining us. We turn now to the 2024 election that ends a week from today. Early voting is underway right now, both in person and by mail. And joining us is the Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, Brian Corley. Welcome to Tuesday Cafe, Brian.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for being with us. I know it's a busy time for you, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to our audience about the election. So people are able to vote right now. Remind us about the different ways, the different options people have to vote.
Well, in Florida, you have options. Of course, you have your election day polling place, which is, of course, going to be November 5th. You have early voting that's going on in Pasco, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. We started the 21st. We will go through this coming Saturday, November 2nd. Vote by mail has come and gone. That deadline has passed. But at this point, you have early voting or election day in-person voting.
And you say the deadline for mail voting has passed. You're talking about the deadline to request a mail ballot, but you can still return your mail ballot if you have one.
Absolutely. Great point. Yeah, we still have a lot of outstanding vote by mail ballots. You can return those either, of course, USPS, although I tell people, I would say today, give about a week because of the volume. You can always return it to one of our secure ballot intake stations at our early voting sites, any one of our 13, or of course, deliver it to our office. But it's very important under Florida law, it has to be back to our office no later than or by 7 p.m. on Election Day.
So to emphasize that point, if you're thinking about dropping your mail ballot in the mail later this week or the weekend or even next Tuesday, it's very likely it won't get to you in time to be counted. So in that case, you would drop it off at your office, the supervisor of elections in whatever county you live in, you drop it off in person at their office?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
So what can you tell us about crowds in Pasco County at the early in-person voting sites?
I'm pleased to report that, and I can only speak for Pasco, but I've talked to some other colleagues as well. Democracy is alive and well, and I'm personally amazed at. I've been saying somewhat tongue-in-cheek, civility is back, and what I mean by that is every election has its own vibe, and I think back to a few cycles ago where voters were more friendly than they had been, say, in 2016 and 20. And I've been out and about at early voting sites, interacting with voters and assisting. And people are, regardless of political identification or gender or race, people seem more jovial. They're doing their civic duty, and they're not as It's palatable how voters seem more friendly than they had been in the past, and that's very refreshing to see. And I'm very pleased to report that.
And oftentimes we see pictures or we experience the long lines on Election Day. But I think in general, what we're learning is that if you want to kind of quicken and not having not as long lines, you can go during early voting because it's spread out so much longer that oftentimes you'll be able to vote pretty much right away during early voting. Is that what you've been seeing in Pasco County?
Yeah, we're seeing. I mean, there's obviously some wait time because the problem we have is it's a multi-page ballot. There are 6 amendments on there, and literally forcing in our county and most counties 2 physical pieces of paper. So what I tell voters, we sent you your sample ballot, and if whatever reason you don't have one, you can go on our website or any SOE website. It's very important. Do your research. Be prepared, because if you have your sample ballot. In fact, we love when voters come in with their sample ballots because they're prepared and it's going to expedite the process. So it'll save them time and other voters time as well. I can't stress that enough.
But there are rules for what you can and can't be having inside of a polling location. I'm pretty sure you can't take pictures inside, and there are probably some restrictions on signage and what you might even be wearing inside. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, no photography is allowed. I was at an early voting site over the weekend, and I felt kind of bad. It was a first-time voter, which we make a big deal about. But mom or dad had wanted to take her photo, and I had to politely interject and say, can we do that outside? Because that's not lawful. The only exception is a ballot selfie. A lot of voters will say, how do I know who I voted for? You can legally take literally a picture of your ballot if you want to. That's certainly your right to. As far as what you can wear, there's so much misinformation, disinformation online. Where other states, we literally cannot wear anything as a voter. Obviously, our election workers are nonpartisan. They're not going to wear anything political. But in Florida, you can wear anything that's on the person. You can wear your political T-shirt or ball cap or whatever if you're there to vote. Once you're finished voting, then you have to go outside past the no solicitation zone, which is 150 feet from the entrance to the polling place. So you can wear your political stuff proudly. That's what it's all about. But know that once you vote, you have to go outside, obviously.
Are there changes to voting because of the recent hurricanes?
There are, and Governor DeSantis signed an executive order for Hurricane Helene, and then another one for Hurricane Milton, allowing us to commingle polling places. For example, I know my colleague in the Bay Area, we lost some polling places because of the hurricane, so we're able to waive the notice requirements of within 30 days of election. So we're able to pivot to an alternate polling site, for example. Things like that. We're able to waive some of the training. Our poll workers, our election workers, receive training for the March PPP as well as the August primary. So they're trained. The law says you have to do training every election. So the governor, and we much appreciate that order because it'll waive that. It's assisting us in kind of pulling off an election during a stressful time post-hurricane.
You mentioned poll workers. In a lot of areas of the country, we've heard about these stories about poll workers being harassed by people. What's your experience of that in Pasco County, and how are you training your poll workers to handle that, and maybe even training law enforcement to handle that?
Yeah, it's nothing new for us. We've always partnered with law enforcement. They have our back without going into detail, and to make sure that we have a safe and secure voting environment with access for all voters and the safety of our election workers. There is a special place in heaven for our election workers. I was concerned going into the cycle about losing poll workers, and we didn't. But I will tell you this. We're being bombarded with disinformation. I get calls and emails most every day, and it's fascinating to me because voters are reaching out to things that are allegedly happening in other states. I'll give you an example. I've gotten several phone calls and emails relaying about allegedly vote flipping machines in Georgia. This has got to stop. People who are perpetrating these lies are doing the bidding of our foreign adversaries, and those that are putting misinformation. These are our fellow Americans, our elected officials, who are either respectfully ignorant or lying. And I say that not to be sarcastic or condescending. It has to stop. It turns out in Georgia, for example, one voter made a mistake and asked for an alternate ballot to rectify it. Perfectly legal. The voter was happy, and suddenly it became vote flipping. As I mentioned, I was at early voting sites over the weekend, and I saw not once, not twice, but 3 times in our county where voters said, one voter turned to me and said, I made a mistake. What do I do? Guess what we did? We spoiled that ballot. We got the voter a new one. All is well. But this torrent of misinformation is literally doing the bidding of those that want to polarize Americans and erode voter confidence. And we're letting them win. And it pains me to see our thousands of election workers giving blood, sweat, and tears just to try and go against the tide of those that are trying to divide us. And I'm over it as an American. And I hope others will join me in that sentiment.
Our guest is Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, Brian Corley. This is Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan, and we're broadcasting live on October 29th from the studios of WMNF in Tampa. And Brian, on that note, I saw this morning on Twitter. It was posted last night by a local member of Congress. And it's a short video that I'm going to play the audio for and ask for your comment. It has to do with voter suppression accusations. A local member of Congress, Anna Paulina Luna, is calling this a massive coordinated voter suppression effort. And so if she's right, I think our audience should know about it. And if she's wrong, they should know that as well. So here's what Anna Paulina Luna posted last night on Twitter.
We just uncovered a massive coordinated voter suppression effort, not just here in Florida, but also in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, that's being coordinated and funded by this dark money, left-leaning super PAC. The point is that what they're doing is they're dropping these mailers, not just here in Florida, but also Michigan, Pennsylvania, on Republican incumbents and also Republican candidates in office in an effort to suppress the Republican electorate that has not voted yet. Remember, it's important that you vote early and that you vote in person because it allows you to allows the GOP to micro-target the rest of the Republican voters that have not shown up and also to ballot chase. But the reason why they're trying to do this is because they know that President Trump is going to win. Okay, he's surging in the polling, and with your help and your early vote, he is going to be the next president. We are now 7 days out, but they are trying to do this because they understand the fight is going to be control of the House of Representatives and also Senate. So they are lying. See this, identify it, throw them out, and tell your friends it's voter suppression.
That's Congressmember Anna Paulina Luna speaking on Twitter last night. She calls it a massive coordinated voter suppression effort. During the video, she flashed up some pictures of these flyers. And from what I could tell, it was from the Center for Voter Information. The flyers said, keeping manufacturing jobs in America, defending America from cyber terrorism, supporting small business program. I don't know what this is, but if there's a massive coordinated voter suppression effort like Anna Paulina Luna is suggesting, we should know about it. What do you know, Brian Corley?
I will say this. In one regard, the Congresswoman is right with regards to this organization, the Center for Voter Information. I've been battling this group, my colleagues and I, for probably 10 plus years. They are infamous for inaccurate mailings, voter registrations in the past that went to people that were deceased that never lived in Florida, 9-year-old children, for example. Their accuracy is horrible. I can speak to that. I can't speak to the political angle, but I did notice the Congresswoman alluded to in-person voting only. And I will tell you this, we did see a marked decrease in vote by mail utilization. It has become, quite honestly, hijacked by politics. What I mean by that is Florida, as I mentioned, one of the 3 ways to vote by mail. It is safe, it is secure, and we had advocated for it to save time and also to avoid lines at the polls. And let me quickly make the case. I think a lot of politicians confuse what Florida does with other states with vote by mail or absentees. In Florida, we don't mail it out to just anybody. By law, you have to request it. It's always been that way under the law. Other states like Utah, Colorado, Oregon, et cetera, they mail it out to every registered voter. I don't like that because it's a huge waste of taxpayer resources. But in Florida, you have to request it. When you request it, we're going to validate who you are based on the PII you provide, last four, social, DL number, et cetera. When we mail a vote by mail ballot to you, it's not forwardable. If you've not updated your address with us, it comes back to our office. Every signature is checked, and if it does not match, we're all given handwriting training by the Department of State. If it doesn't match, we have to reach out to you, the voter, and you're going to have to submit additional affidavit and ID to make sure that ballot counts. Every day by law, we have to report to Tallahassee who are the new requests for vote by mail and who's returned it. Who has access to that under the law? The political parties and the campaigns. So they can see in real time. In fact, I joke with voters, if you get tired of political mailings and flyers and text messages and you want to stop, return your vote by mail ballot. So I would respectfully disagree with the only in-person angle. Voters have options in Florida, and we are, as Governor DeSantis said, and I agree wholeheartedly, we are the gold standard.
And I've had you longer than I promised, but I do have, I would, if you don't mind, can you tell us about the ride to the polls in Pasco County on Election Day?
Yeah, in fact, President Reagan once said the 8 most feared words in the English language: I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Not in Pasco. We have partnered with the Board of County Commissioners and their public transit to offer free rides to the polls. So if it's Election Day, or even early voting as well, if you need to get to the polls and you show your voter information card, you don't pay a fare that day. It's a great, great resource. We've done this for about a decade now, and it's very, very well received by the voters who utilize it.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on Tuesday Cafe, Brian.
Thank you very much.
Brian Corley is the Pasco County Supervisor of Elections. This is Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan. Here's a promo about voting.
This is an important election year. To help inform you about voting, the candidates, and the issues on the ballot, the WMNF News team has partnered with 10 other public media organizations around the state to create a 2024 Florida Voter Guide.
You can find it on our website at wmnf.org/vote. It has information about all the candidates for the U.S. Senate and House and the Florida Senate and House.
Candidates provide their positions on issues ranging from the cost of insurance to the environment to how they'll vote on the proposed constitutional amendments. You will also find a tool to help locate the district you vote in, as well as how to register to vote and how to find your polling location.
Tell a friend about WMNF.org/vote. It has information about candidates and issues in the 2024 elections in Florida.
On election night, WMNF will give you the opportunity to freak, dream, groove, and get all the important election results. The Tie-Dye Tuesday music will entertain you throughout the night. And starting when polls close at 7, the WMNF News team will break in every 20 minutes with everything you need to stay informed. And if you still need information about voting, the candidates, or the amendments, you can find it at WMNF.org/vote. This is Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan, and we're broadcasting on October 29th, live from the studios of WMNF Tampa. We're talking about the elections, and earlier we were talking about water. So I hope you enjoy this program, and if you missed any of it, you can listen back on WMNF.org. Let me read an email that came in when I had Brian Corley on the line. I held him long. That's why I couldn't keep him for this question, but maybe we can get to the bottom of it. An anonymous writes, I never got my mail-in ballot, and I did request it back in April through Pasco County. How would I know that no one stole it and voted for me? So again, that would have been great for me to have asked Brian Corley. I apologize for not seeing it in time, but I think you can check your status on the Supervisor of Elections website. I know this goes for a lot of the Supervisor of Elections websites around the in the counties around the area. You can go in, you put in things like your name and maybe your birth date, and then it'll give you the status, and it'll tell you that if you have a mail ballot, whether it's been received and whether it's been counted. And so The other thing you could probably do is go to the supervisor of elections office, and if it says you've gotten one, a mail ballot, and you don't, they would probably be able to spoil that one for you, the one that they sent out and perhaps was stolen, who knows. And then you can just get a new ballot and you can cast it there. But that's probably something that would be handled best at the supervisor of elections offices. And you can find those out on the web where your local supervisor of elections office are. So good luck, 727. Keep us posted if you find out that your ballot was already cast. That'd be quite interesting to follow up and find out what happened with that. But hopefully they will just give you a new one, or maybe you'll even find out that it was just never mailed and you just have to vote by a method other than mail voting. So thanks for that question. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about the Amendment 3, which is one of the items that Floridians are voting on. It would make the recreational use of cannabis legal for adults in Florida. Last Friday, there was a forum at the Tampa Tiger Bay Club, and we're going to just play a few minutes of that right now because we don't have that much time left. You can still write in if you'd like. And, you know what? I have a caller. Let's see what Jack in Palm Harbor has to say. Hi, Jack. You're on the air.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for taking my call. Might be a little late. I hope your guests are still there.
I have no guests, but make your point quickly, and we can see what we can do with it.
Okay, great. I was just wondering, are there or have there ever been any current studies about the spring water? If the contamination were to become so great, is there any possibility that the water coming out of the springs would then be contaminated?
Yeah, in fact, I think that our guests addressed something like that because he said essentially that the water quality starts with the wetlands. And so what happens is if you have water filtering through the wetlands and it's so polluted that it doesn't get filtered very well, polluted water can come up through springs. So there's some springs that have heavy nitrogen loads, and right from the spring head, you can see pollution. Like algae, signs of pollution, like algae blooms and so forth. So yes, there's definitely the possibility that water from the aquifer can be high in nitrogen, and when it comes out of the springs, it's already essentially what we'd consider polluted, and then you'd have algae blooms from there. So thanks for that question, Jack. I really appreciate it. And we're going to go on, as I was mentioning, to recreational use of cannabis legal for adults in Florida if Amendment 3 passes. So here's a short segment. We're going to hear from 3 people who are opposed to Amendment 3. Democratic State Senator Darrell Roussan. We'll hear from Jessica Spencer, the Director of Advocacy for No on 3. And we'll hear from Ellen Snelling with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance. And I'm saying these in the order of how you'll hear them in this clip. And then we'll hear from one person supporting the amendments, who was also a guest on The Skinny last Friday, Republican State Senator Joe Gruters. This is Tuesday Cafe. You're listening to WMNF Tampa.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to Tiger Bay. Many times I get invited and I don't get invited back. So it's a blessing to be invited back here. My name is Darrell Roussan. I've served for 16 years in Tallahassee, 8 in the House, 8 in the Senate, and I'm term limited, so I have 2 more years to go, and then I'm done, so take your shots. I represent the last Democratic senator standing on the west coast of Florida. My district begins at Bears Avenue, travels south, picking up East Tampa, Seminole Heights, Jackson Heights, Robles Park, Sulphur Springs, Midtown, down to Harbor Island, all of Ybor City, large chunks of Brandon, Riverview, Apollo Beach, and then it stops there and it jumps across the bay. And I represent from 22nd Avenue North and St. Pete south to the Skyway Bridge. So I live 5 minutes from the Skyway Bridge, but my district begins at Bears Avenue. I've enjoyed being passionate about substance abuse and mental health, and I'm glad we're having this discussion today, and I'm anxious to tell you how I stand.
Hi, good afternoon, or is it still morning? Not sure. Nope. Good afternoon. Thank you again for having us here. This is a wonderful platform. Very excited to see all these faces again, considering what we've been facing and dealing with the last couple of weeks. So thank you for coming out because this is an important topic. My name is Dr. Jessica Spencer. I am the Director of Advocacy for Vote No on 3, and largely because I am a substance abuse prevention professional, I've been in the field for 24 years, and this is an issue that is close to my heart, and I am excited to talk to you about it. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Snelling, and like Jessica, I've been in the prevention field for about 24 years. We actually have gone back a ways, knowing each other through our prevention work. But the reason I got into prevention was because of my own family. My daughter started using drugs in high school. Specifically, she started with marijuana. And that's why I changed my career from being a registered dietitian to trying to help other families that are dealing with substance abuse. So I'm very passionate about substance abuse prevention and treatment, as well as good policy to make sure we have the best substance abuse laws that we can in our state.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Gruters. I'm a state senator representing Sarasota-Manatee counties like Senator Rasan. I'm also in my final 2 years, but I will say that you guys are all lucky to have Senator Rasan so close because he is such a wonderful member of the state Senate. And although he's not on my political team, I will tell you that he does a great job representing not only this area, but Florida all around, and is just an overall, all-around good guy. My background is I'm a practicing CPA. I'm basically an auditor. I have my son with me here, Spencer. He wanted to come see. He has the day off of school. And I was, for those of you who don't know, I was the Republican Party of Florida chairman for 4 years when we flipped Florida red. I was Donald Trump's state chairman in the 2016 and 2020 races. And look forward to the debate today.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll jump right into questions.
Hi, Gene Suited. There's a campaign, obviously, pro and anti. I saw a commercial that was anti that listed that people would be able to grow their own marijuana, which is not true because of federal law. So I think there's a lot of confusion between whether it passes and what the laws will be and how they interact with federal law. And I don't understand why the false information from the anti side when there's enough information for them. So could you tell me, should this pass, how it interacts with federal law, what will be allowed, what won't be allowed as far as that goes? Because I think that's the more important question.
Thank you. Senator Rasan, would you take that one to start, and we'll go down the line.
I punt to Joe Gruters.
You're welcome to do that.
This amendment will not affect federal law. In fact, it will conflict with it in many ways, such as federal law still declares it to be an illegal drug, an unlawful substance. And this amendment, if it passes, will make it legal in the state of Florida. So that has a lot of ramifications.
So I can address that question as well. So the thing to understand is that it's a constitutional amendment. And you will hear often from the other side that don't worry about it, we can legislate it. Don't worry about it, we can write a bill and we can allow home grow, we can allow cultivate. That's the word that's important. What you need to understand with constitutional amendments is that when you put an implementing bill or you put in subsequent bills, you can only put bills that match the language of the amendment. For instance, it has to be consistent. In fact, it's specifically written that it has to be consistent. The word cultivate is only written in this amendment when referencing the organizations and the industry. It does not reference individuals. So therefore, if our, as Senator Gruters likes to say, oh, our governor will do that, or we've heard that, oh, the governor wants this, it'll happen. Well, we know that it can't because it wouldn't be consistent with the language of the amendment. And that's the misinformation that's going around, and we need to understand how constitutional amendments actually work.
As far as federal law, our law, if this amendment were to pass, it would be in direct conflict, just as Senator Rasan said. So we would be having a certain amount of risk in the state of Florida by legalizing recreational marijuana. And as far as the home grows, it is not addressed in the amendment, is completely left out because that means that it's illegal. The only ones that can grow and cultivate are the medical marijuana companies, and at some point in the future, perhaps others. So I think it was written very specific for these medical marijuana companies to be able to cultivate, grow, and sell, and actually make a lot of money, whereas people cannot grow their own at home. And when they talk about freedom, you see some of the ads saying, oh, freedom in Florida if we have legalized marijuana, but you can't even grow it at home.
The legislature has tightened the laws up on how you could pass a constitutional amendment, how you can gather the signatures and what happens afterwards a lot over the last couple of years, so we don't get a lot of different amendments on the ballot. But basically, when you want to pass a constitutional amendment, you can only have a single subject. So this subject is adult use recreational marijuana for those over the age of 21. Once that passes, the legislature will then go in and regulate it. We will pass an implementing bill, and in that bill, we will have the ability to go regulate it. And what I would say is that we'll do it the Florida way. We'll put these guardrails up, and the great thing about having a great conservative governor like Ron DeSantis and conservative members of the legislature like me, and even people like Darrell Verson, who looks at things with a very narrow focus on this issue, is we're going to do this the right way. Some states early on, when they implemented their language, that, by the way, 24 states have already passed adult use recreation, and on top of that, the District of Columbia. Some states that went early didn't do it as well. Colorado, New York, those are run by liberal legislatures and liberal governors. Where you have conservative governors, Arizona, Missouri, Ohio, they've done it the right way, and we're going to be able to follow suit. Those guardrails to make sure everybody's protected will be there.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, Patrick Basquette. First and foremost, senators, thank you for your selfless commitment to our state and public service. You are truly appreciated for what you do. So I have a question about the two anti-advocates. And ma'am, are you a medical doctor or academic doctor?
I have a master's degree in substance use counseling and education, and my doctorate is in education with a focus on substance use treatment and strength-based treatment planning.
Okay, I mean, I didn't know. So the question is very simple. Did you oppose the initiative around medical marijuana? And if you, or did you support it? And is this different? And I'll also make an offhanded comment. Isn't medical marijuana in contrast to federal law itself? You mentioned that recreational would be in contrast to federal law, and isn't medical in contrast to federal law? Thank you.
Yes, actually, some may or may not remember, I was actually the spokesperson for Vote No on 2 for both cycles. So I traveled the state with that initiative as well. We do have a medical marijuana here in the state of Florida. It was a constitutional amendment. It's passed. It's in our state constitution. This is for recreational marijuana, and so I want to be very clear that they are two separate things. And so we are here to talk about, and we're here looking at the constitutional amendment. And the interesting piece, and I want to address actually the single subject, this amendment didn't go to this particular Supreme Court and be shot down because they wrote the word cultivate and they needed to take it out. That didn't happen. Also, we can't say and hide behind single subject when it's written in other areas and there's multiple things that are in there. So single subject is not a valid argument here as to why cultivate was not put in this particular amendment. And yes, it is different from medical marijuana. This is recreational marijuana.
And I have to chime in on this. I am 26 years, 7 months, and 1 day clean of marijuana, cocaine, alcohol, and cigarettes. And when Charlotte's Web, medical marijuana, came on the floor of the House, in my debate, I said, why would I, a recovering addict who has seen drug treatment facilities across this country and seen what a marijuana addiction can do to lives, to destroy lives, destroy neighborhoods, why would I vote for medical marijuana? Well, it was real simple for me. I voted for it because I'm not God. And if science and medicine say that a subset of people gain relief from the medicinal properties contained in marijuana, then who am I to say no to someone's medicine? And that's why I voted yes, but legalization of recreational marijuana is completely different. and I'm against the amendment, but I'm telling my voters of my district and of the state, of those who are willing to listen, to do your research and vote your conscience. There are enough reasons to be against Amendment 4, Amendment 3, Amendment 4 too. There are enough reasons to be against Amendment 3 as there are to be for it. But I supported medical marijuana. In fact, I created the MERI program, which stands for Medical Marijuana Education Research Initiative at Florida A&M University, which has been responsible for over $23 million going to Florida A&M to conduct awareness, education, and prevention workshops.
One of your questions was, isn't medical marijuana, which is legalized in Florida, also against federal law? And yes, it is, but I feel like it's much more accepted at the federal level, and there has been some research on it, and we do already have it in Florida, and I feel like it's fairly easy to get a medical card. I think we all know that. So people who have a medical condition can get a card. We have almost 1 million patients in the state of Florida now. So that is already here. It's working well. There's doctors overlooking the patients who are using it. Recreational, as Senator Rouson just said, completely different. I would just have to use an example of oxycodone. Can you imagine recreational oxycodone? I mean, we're talking about if marijuana is a medicine, and if that's what we all agreed upon, and we have it in our state, now we're going to go ahead and let's have recreational. I just think there are so many risks associated with the recreational use of any drug, but in particular, there was a study in Colorado that showed that for every $1 of revenue that's brought in from taxes from recreational marijuana, there was $4.50 spent in social and health costs. So even though some revenue would come into our state, the costs from DUI crashes, child poisonings, increases in insurance rates, all the different things that would happen would far outweigh any benefit.
So it's tough because I've heard so many different things, and to try to give you the best answer, medical versus recreational, let me just answer that. That's the basis of this whole argument. Now let me ask you out there, how many people out there know somebody that consumes marijuana? Just knows somebody. How many here of the people that raise your hand that knows somebody that consumes marijuana knows they buy it with a medical marijuana license card? How many here knows it but they buy it through some other way? So the problem is all those people that raise hands that knows people who bought it the other way, the problem is when they buy it, they can go to jail. 16,000 people in Florida were arrested last year for minor possession of marijuana. On top of that, when they're buying it from these illicit markets, it comes with harmful material. It could potentially contain harmful substances.
Well, that's Republican State Senator Joe Gruder speaking in favor of Amendment 3, which is on the ballot. We also heard from three opponents, Alan Snelling with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance, Jessica Spencer, the Director of Advocacy for No on 3, and Democratic State Senator Daryl Rouson. Thanks to TBAE for that audio from the Tampa Bay Tiger Bay Club last Friday. Well, this has been WMNF's Tuesday Cafe. I'm Sean Canan. Thanks to my guests earlier in the show, Pasco County Supervisor of Elections Brian Corley, and from the Florida Right to Clean Water PAC, we heard from Carl Dygert and Joe Bonassia. If you missed any of the show, or if you'd like to share it with a friend, you can find it on WMNF.org. And if you haven't mailed your mail ballot back yet, it's probably too late. The post office said that yesterday was probably the deadline, so you should drop it off in person at the Supervisor of Elections or at an early vote site. You can swap it for a new ballot. During this time slot tomorrow, Shelley will host Midpoint. She'll be interviewing candidates from the two closest congressional races in the area, Whitney Fox versus Anna Paulina Luna and Pat Kemp versus Laurel Lee. So please tune in tomorrow at 10 for that. Coming up next is Wavemakers with Janet and Tom Scherberger. They'll talk about democracy with Josh Scacco, a USF Associate Professor of Communication and Director of its Center for Sustainable Democracy. They'll discuss a national survey the center conducted with YouGov on the state of democracy in the U.S. and any lessons we can draw from this year's elections. And then at noon is Wide Awake America with Nadine Smith. Her guest is award-winning journalist Ernest Owens to discuss the groundbreaking book, The Case for Cancel Culture, how this democratic tool works to liberate us all. Thanks so much for listening to WMNF Tampa, live on October 29th, 2024. This is Tuesday.